Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Kennedy, and I'm with the FBI National Academy Associates. We're excited to co-host today's webinar with our alliance partner, Utility. Today's presentation is entitled Evidence Management in 2022, Critical Features Your Agency Needs When Selecting an Effective Digital Evidence Management System. I'd like to thank Utility for their continued support, partnership, and commitment to law enforcement by sharing their expertise, technology, and information with our FBI National Academy Associates members and constituents. For those participants who may not be familiar with the FBI National Academy Associates, we are a nonprofit international organization of 16,000 plus senior law enforcement executives dedicated to providing our communities, states, countries, and the profession with the highest degree of law enforcement expertise, training, education, and information. We are the strongest law enforcement leadership network in the world and are dedicated to strengthening the rule of law around the globe. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our moderator, Charles Edwards from Utility, to start the program. Charles, it's all yours.
John, thank you very much for the introduction, and a big thank you to you and our panel of experts and our attendees of today's webinar for our discussion. And we want to welcome you to today's discussion. It's all about evidence management in 2022, critical features your agency needs when selecting an effective DEMS. As John said, I'm Charles Edwards, and I'm from Jackson Spalding, a marketing communications agency, and we are proud to partner with Utility on this and so many efforts. I'm here today moderating the discussion on behalf of Utility, the technology company that provides groundbreaking digital systems for frontline professionals that depend on speed, accuracy, easy to access data, and transparency in their work. And we are proud to be here in partnership with the FBI and AA. Today, I'm joined by Lieutenant Don Peck of the Nampa Police Department, along with Utility's Chief Technology Officer, Simon Araya, and Utility Business Manager and retired Lieutenant with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, Brian Churchill. They've all come together to discuss the benefit of DEMS and best practices to consider when selecting and rolling out that technology. We're going to begin today by meeting our panel. So Lieutenant Peck, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Charles. Like you said, my name's Don Peck. I'm a lieutenant with the Nampa Police Department. I've been with the Nampa Police Department for just over 22 years. I just passed my 22nd year this last month. I'm humbled to have served here in the city of Nampa for my entire career. For the last 3 years, I've been a lieutenant with our agency and have had the opportunity to move into my current role, which is an administrative role, which has given me the opportunity to oversee our technology and work hand in hand with Utility for the last 3 years in enhancing the way that the Nampa Police Department polices our community and makes our community a lot safer.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you for that introduction. Brian Churchill, let's go to you if you want to give us a little bit about your background.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. My last 3 duty positions there were I served as the executive officer for East District. I was the executive officer for the Community Engagement Office. And then my last job, I was the executive officer for Downtown District. I'm a graduate from the FBI National Academy Session 260 and a former chief of police out here in Colorado for Manitou Springs PD. I've been with Utility as a business manager now for a little over 1 year.
Brian, thank you for that. And last but not least, Simon, would love to hear a little bit about you.
I'm Simon Araya. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Utility. I've been with Utility from the beginning. I've had the privilege of working on exciting technology for law enforcement, and I'm happy to be on this panel today to discuss digital evidence management systems of today and the future.
Simon, Brian, Lieutenant Peck, thank you very much for those introductions. And we're going to go ahead and dive right in. You know, industry experts tell us that 80% of evidence involved in an investigation is now all digital. We also know that in the second quarter of this year alone, there were 1.287 petabytes of media uploaded to the utility system. So with this in mind, we know it's critical for agencies to understand how to select and implement an effective digital evidence management system, or DEMS, to ingest, store, process, analyze, review, and share this ever-increasing amount of digital evidence, all while maintaining a secure chain of custody. So with that in mind, we want to dig into a list of questions we have for our panel of experts. But first, we want to start with you, those attending this webinar. And we have a question for our attendees today. So you'll see this opportunity to answer the poll. The poll will pop up as you're watching the screen here. And the first question is this: does your department currently use a digital evidence management system? Again, this is the first question for our attendees to answer, yes or no. Does your department currently use a digital evidence management system? We want to give you an opportunity to take this poll right now, and we'll read the results real time before we dive into our questions for our panel of experts. Again, this will be the first of a few poll questions we have during our discussion today. And the first question is, does your department currently use a digital evidence management system? Take a moment and answer the question, and we'll read the results real time. As we wait for those results, we definitely want to let you know that as we are going through our list of questions, be thinking about the questions that you want to ask and enter those questions into the chat. We'll make sure to read those questions as soon as they come in to make sure our panel of experts are speaking to the questions and comments you have for them on this topic. So let's look at the results of the first poll question right now. Again, that question was, does your department currently use a digital evidence management system? And really almost split. 51% of attendees of this webinar said yes, 49 said no. And so that's really interesting for us to see. We're going to incorporate some of that in our discussion today, and be on the lookout for some more poll questions as we continue our conversation. So we want to thank you all for taking that poll question. We've brought this group together today with one goal in mind. We want to make sure that you understand how to navigate the process of selecting and implementing DEMS, along with key features to consider for your agency. Following today's discussion, we hope you'll have the following takeaways. We hope you'll learn some best practices when selecting a successful DEMS. We also hope you'll see the benefits of an effective DEMS for agencies, district attorneys, and for communities, how to successfully roll out DEMS, how to encourage excitement and engagement for DEMS amongst your team, and some real-life examples of effective DEMS in the field. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start our conversation with our panel of experts. And Lieutenant Peck, I'd love to start with you. Can you share a bit about the different ways you've seen data managed over the course of your career? You saw that almost half of the people who are in attendance, they're using it, but some, the other half are not. And so as you've seen this change over time, what has really stood out to you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. In 22 years, we've really changed our technology. When I started, we had a little pocket recorder that used a little micro cassette recorder that we would pop that little cassette tape out and book that into evidence. We would have to go to the back trunk of our car. We'd have to eject on a DUI, we'd eject the VHS tape out of the trunk of the car and have to take it in and parse out the piece of video that we needed for that. But then over the time, 22 years ago when I came into the police department, I was one of the first to have a cell phone because I still lived with my parents at the time and I needed a phone. So, it was one of those things that now I carry two phones with me. I've got an iPad for work. I've got my laptop. When we start going through where we've gone from 22 years ago to where we're at today, we've got body cams. Now we've got in-car video. As a city, we're starting to roll out intelligent city stuff where we're pulling in traffic cameras into the city. So as you start to look at where we've gone just internally with technology, we've really increased what we're using. And, you know, in the old day, we would just take and we'd put maybe an audio file on a CD. Well, now data is getting so large, you're not putting it onto a CD, you're not putting it onto a DVD. And if you are, then you still run into degradation issues when you're talking about your data. So finding a solution that helps to keep your data fresh, so that way when you need it 20 years from now, you've got it. Having your ability to, when your digital forensic guy dives into a cell phone and does an extraction, and you've got 2 terabytes of data from a financial case, you've got a place to put that and not having to have that on-premises solution. That's really been the morph of where data's been.
So Lieutenant Peck, let's build off of that. You talked about where it started, how you've seen it evolve over your career. And now you said there are certain things that were used then that aren't used now, but how is your department managing digital evidence today?
So we are really in the initial stages of moving towards the digital evidence management system. I was just up in our server room this morning going through with our IT folks solutions, because we're running out of server rack space and looking at, okay, do we bring in another server for this other function? Where can we start to save some space in our server room so that way we have room for the stuff that we need to have? Servers are expensive, and I even talked about the degradation of data on a thumb drive or on a DVD. Well, it happens in a server too. So there's issues that you run into. So if we keep it all internal, when we're talking about these large cases that can hold on for a long period of time, we're trying to find a solution that doesn't require physical work from somebody internal to the agency. Finding a solution where the technology and the technology company managing that for us, they ensure that the data is fresh and it stays correct, so that way when we need that, it's ready to go for us.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you. Simon, you just heard Lieutenant Peck talk about how Nampa Police Department is using it. If we go back to the poll for a second, you saw that 49% of those surveyed said that they are not using DEMS at this particular time. So if you put yourself in their shoes, what are the kind of IT considerations that those agencies should keep in mind when they're seeking out a DEMS?
So when we're talking about DEMS, we're talking about digital evidence management system that's in the cloud. So the first thing to consider is connectivity. It's important for for there to be decent connection to the internet so that the evidence is accessible at all times. The advantages of having all your data in a single digital evidence management system is the fact that it's accessible from a mobile device, a tablet, or your laptop, and you don't actually have to be on-prem within the network. So connectivity is one of the first things that an IT department should consider. The second thing is, as the lieutenant mentioned, your data comes in many forms and formats, and it may be stored in different places. So there has to be a migration plan on how to move that data to the cloud so that it's all consolidated into a single repository and made accessible easily, so that when you're wanting to find something, it's easily accessible to you. The next thing is, as you're bringing that data, as you're doing your data migration plans, you have to figure out how to properly index the data so that it's searchable and easily found when needed. Another thing to consider is access control. And security is very important, so it's extremely important to figure out who has access to what data and build a relationship within the organization as to who has access to what, and a system that is designed from the ground up to be a digital evidence management system will secure access and put every access into chain of custody. So these are the things that need to be considered when migrating from an on-prem or a scattered storage into a digital evidence management system in the cloud.
So Simon, let's build upon that. Let's stay thinking about the 49% who said they aren't using it yet. Let's say they're using that checklist that you just gave in terms of the IT considerations. And let's say they move forward with trying to leverage a DEMS system. What sort of benefits can agencies expect to experience if they go that route?
So I want to go back to what the lieutenant said first. You have to constantly provision more storage and more servers to keep up with the data. And when we say data, right now, data is coming from all sources. It's not just body cameras. It's not just a recorder. We have fixed cameras. We have citizens with mobile devices. We have phone dumps. So there's a lot of data that's coming in. And all of a sudden, you have to have an IT group that is constantly trying to keep up with this, with the avalanche of data. So that is totally gone when you migrate to a cloud-based digital evidence management system. You don't have to worry about that. The next thing is security is also something that you don't have to worry about as much because the data is stored in a CGIS compliant environment. The systems will allow you to have multi-factor authentication. You can actually lock down access from a specific IP address. So you can secure access, and then every access to any evidence is also cataloged in a chain of custody that could be exported with as much detail as you want. So that's extremely important. We talked about access control. The other thing is when you're getting media from different sources, it's not all encoded in the same way. So it's not easily playable unless you have a digital evidence management system that actually converts the media as it's coming in so that it's accessible through mobile devices, browsers, or your laptop or your desktop computer. So these are the advantages that you get. Another one is you can actually do additional services like redaction, transcription, translation on top of just storage and access of data.
Really have to think through all of those different steps. How are you going to gather it? How are you going to store it? And then how are you going to use it when you need to use it? Simon, thank you for that. Brian, you have been really on both sides. You've been with a law enforcement agency. You're now with utility. I'm interested to know from your perspective, what would you say are the 3 key features that agencies should look for when selecting this technology? If you were still working with your law enforcement agency, what would be the 3 key features that you would want to see and you would want to think about when it comes to implementing DEMS?
Well, thank you, Charles. I spent most of my career in operations, and as a supervisor in operations, I would want in a DEMS platform the ability to leverage technology to make life easier for the patrol officers, right? Use technology to take some of that weight of responsibility of ingesting digital evidence off of them and get it into the platform with automation. So number 1 for me is how easy is it to migrate your digital evidence, your media onto your DEMS platform? And I would look for a company that could do that through CAD integration and activation, where just simply taking a radio run connects your body camera to the CAD, which can turn your camera on for you, which can classify the run for you. It can tie other officers' videos to your run. So at the end of that run, when I'm ready to do my report, most of the information I need to connect the video to my report and what I'm going to write is already there for me. Also, ease of use from an investigator standpoint. Can you bring in third-party video? Can you solicit the community to upload cell phone video, upload home security camera video, and businesses to ingest their media into your platform? And you have to have a platform that can read third-party video. But can you do that remotely, or do you have to spend all day canvassing to try to find people that have that? Number 2, a secure chain of custody, right? 80% of all evidence now going to court is digital media evidence. You have to have a chain of custody for that. So I would look for a platform that one, you are in control of your media because it's all shared through the cloud and through email, but two, that logs what's been done with that media, who's accessed it, when they accessed it, what IP address was it accessed from, what did they do with the media? Did they just look at it? Did they share it? Did they redact it? So what was done with it? And something that is court approved in a framework built on policy that you can defend in court. And then three, functionality. Again, back to the ease of use for a police officer, right? If I've just taken a radio run and I know I've recorded that incident and now I need to do my report, do I have a platform that uploads and offloads to the cloud in real time so that that media is already available to me? Or do I have a system that now I have to go back to roll call, I have to dock my camera, I have to download the video, I have to be out of service, I wait on the video and then watch it? Or like with utility, can I simply drive over to a parking lot of the local Walmart, open up my laptop, go to my case file, and my video is available and ready for me to watch 5 minutes after I left that radio run? I can now sit in my car, stay in service, do that report, watch the video, and then I'm done, back on service. That puts my patrol car on the street, puts me available to back up other officers, and puts me there in service to the community without the necessity to go back to roll call and stay off for an extended amount of time.
Brian, thank you for that. I've got a follow-up question based on what you just said, but I want to remind our attendees, at any point that you have a question for one of our panel of experts or the entire panel, feel free to type your question or your comment into the chat. We want to make sure that we're speaking to that question or comment as soon as possible. So as you're watching and listening to what our panel of experts are sharing, feel free to drop in your question or comment and we'll get to it as soon as you drop it in. So Brian, I do want to follow up on something that you said. You mentioned third parties, and I was interested to know from you, when you're talking about, seeking a solution that allows for the intake of data from third parties, what does that really mean, and why is that important when you think about what law enforcement agencies are trying to do every day?
Right, so we all know everybody's filming things nowadays, right? Everybody's got their cell phone out, everybody has home security cameras. So I would look for a platform that allows an investigator, allows a patrol officer to solicit people for that digital evidence management. On our platform, citizens in your neighborhoods can register the fact that they have home security cameras and what type they are. So if I'm an investigator and I've had a burglary on 2nd Street, I can pull up the Polaris map and I can look at the neighborhood around 2nd Street and see that I've got 4 different homes that have registered security cameras on 2nd Street. Remotely from my computer, you can send an email message to those homes to request any digital evidence they may have from a car driving by, somebody cutting through their neighborhood, anything related to that burglary I'm investigating, and remotely, third party, they can upload that video to our DEMS platform for me to use in my investigation. The same with crowdsourcing. Third-party crowdsource. Say it's a Friday night high school football game and you've had a fight, you've had a stabbing, you've had some type of crime that's happened at the football game that people have on film. You just don't know who those people are. With our QR code crowdsourcing, you could post that on your Facebook page, you can put it in the paper, you can post it on your media, and say anybody that has any digital evidence on your cell phone related to the incident that happened at the game Friday night, please upload it through this QR code. You'll get evidence, you'll get information, you'll have people talk to you that you don't even know exist, one, but two, it provides them a sense of security, I think, right? And thinking about your community, the police car does not have to pull up in front of your house anymore for you to provide them with digital evidence. They can do it remotely. Say you've got a drug dealer lives next door and you've taken some video of the activities going on there. You no longer have to go to the police station. The police station does not have to come to your house, right? You don't have to have that police car anymore. You can now send that digital evidence to a detective remotely, third party, through our platform.
It sounds like extremely fast and kind of moving at the speed of communication that we're all used to in these days. Applying that to the gathering of information and potential evidence for law enforcement.
Right, and when you think about fast too, how long does it take to canvass a neighborhood if you're looking for people that might have evidence? If you can just pull up your laptop, pull up a map and look at it and see where all of your security cameras are registered and just start sending emails. You don't have to get in your car, you don't have to go to the neighborhood, you don't have to knock on doors, you don't have to interrupt people's lives. You can just simply send them an email link or a text message to their cell phone and get that evidence that you're looking for.
Brian, thank you. We want to go to our attendees again for another one of our poll questions. And this time the question is, which aspect of a DEMS platform do you think is most important for your department? We have 4 options on the screen here. The first is one interface. The second is security. The third is features. And the fourth option is collaboration capabilities. So again, for our attendees of our webinar, take a moment and answer our second poll question, because we do want to hear from you. Which aspect of a DEMS platform do you think is most important to your department? Either one interface, security, features, or collaboration capabilities. Take a moment and answer the poll question, and as the results come in, we'll read them real time and we'll let our panel of experts react to the results. And we've got our results in here. Again, the question was, which aspect of a DEMS platform do you think is most important to your department? Security is the #1 answer that we got from our attendees taking the poll. Right behind security, one interface and collaboration capabilities, kind of around the same percentage, 22 and 20% respectively, and then features coming in last. Brian, I want to go back to you and we'll circle around to our entire panel here. What does that say to you that most people think that security is the most important feature for a DEMS? Brian, we'll start with you.
All right, well, everybody's worried about being hacked or a virus nowadays. Our solution is, and Simon be able to answer this a lot better than I can. When it comes to IT, I'm still a cop and don't quite speak the IT language, but our solution is cloud-based. It's kept in the CGIS Amazon government web cloud. It is encrypted when it goes up, and when it comes back down, it's copied 12 times. It's protected from viruses. It is locked in. People can't hack it. It doesn't have a server on-prem that can crash or go down, or somebody can't come along and unplug it. Keeping it in that type of format provides for the security people are looking for.
Simon, what does that say to you that security was the #1 answer to that poll question that we just featured for our attendees?
It's not a surprise. I mean, when it comes to evidence, you have to have a secure storage and a secure location, secure access. That's why the CGIS spec is out there, so that everyone can follow the same way of securing criminal justice data. So that is not a surprise for me at all. And just to add to what Brian was saying, it's important to store it securely. It's important to provide secure access to the data, but it's also important to document exactly who's accessing what data, because at the end of the day, accountability comes with security.
And Lieutenant Peck, I mean, you're actually using it within the Nampa Police Department. So when you see the survey results and people are putting security as the #1 around the 40% range, does that jive with what you're thinking about when you're implementing DEMS? What was your reaction to the poll results?
Yeah, security is obviously got to be first and foremost. That's, and the piece that I failed to mention earlier and Simon brought it up is it's that chain of custody. That's one of the things that we talk about a lot with the on-prem solution issues with the server. I've got to have an IT manager give permission for somebody to be able to get access into that server. And then once they have access in, I can't see who touched that piece of evidence. Now, in this type of a solution, I have that. So I have my chain of custody. It helps to build the security piece of it, because when it gets to court, you can say, and it goes to the prosecutor's office through the same portal. So it's not, I don't have to take and somehow pick it up and move it over to the prosecutor's office through either some sort of other solution. So our IT folk, they hate it when we go buy a thumb drive, and they want us to encrypt it and all those things. And I'm like, Brian, I'm a cop, and it's like, you encrypt that, that makes it harder for me. This type of a solution, I don't have to worry about that because it's already done for me. I just upload it, it goes, and I have somebody that goes out and grabs the evidence at a grocery store from their video system. It goes up, it's good. I don't have to think about the security anymore because it's all taken care of. So yeah, security is the first thing that we looked at, and because of our relationship with utility through the body cameras, it was the natural fit for us because we know how secure everything is on our side when we were just running the body cams.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you for that. We did get one question in from our attendees into the chat, and Leanne may have gotten her question offline, but Brian, I'll pose Leanne's question to you because there may be others attending the webinar who may have a similar question or thought here. Leanne wanted to know, is the mapping part of DEMS or is it used by another aspect of the system there? Any insight you can provide there?
With our new release coming out, Polaris, it is part of the DEMS solution. It is all encompassing. You'll be able to do the mapping, you can live stream, you can whiteboard on a map remotely. It's all built into the DEMS. Our connection to CAD is to attach the CAD information related to the run that you're on to the video that you're recording.
Brian, thank you for that. And Leanne, thank you for your question. For our other attendees of the webinar, if you have a question based on what we've talked about so far, or maybe something we haven't talked about, or if you have a comment that you'd like to add, please feel free to drop it into the chat, and we want to ask your question or have our panel of experts respond to your comment as soon as you drop it in. Lieutenant Peck, I wanted to go back to you because one of the questions agencies often have when they're considering how to successfully roll out DEMS is how do they get their existing data into a new system? Based on your experience of doing it with the Nampa Police Department, are there any best practices you can share as it relates to getting the existing data into a new system?
Yeah, it comes to engaging with your IT first and foremost, and also with your current evidence staff, because if you've got stuff that's in a different solution, you've got to have people who are able to move it from that solution over. And like Simon talked about the connectivity, you've got to make sure that when you're trying to make that solution work, you're going to have the bandwidth to do it. If you're trying to push a whole bunch of data and your IT folk have not given you enough connectivity through the bandwidth that they have, you're going to impact other pieces of your operation. So getting somebody from your IT staff at the table to ensure that whatever it is you're doing, you're not going to negatively impact other pieces. But then it's your evidence folks, because most likely they're the ones that are keeping the tab on the current solution. If it's a thumb drive that's in evidence, you've got to have them go get it and get it into the solution. So making sure that they're prepared to, and they buy in. I mean, that's the other piece, right? Is if you've got an evidence team that they're like, yeah, we don't really believe in what you're trying to do here, let them look at it, let them touch it, let them see what it does and how much easier it's going to be. And I know our IT folk, they've been asking for a DEMS solution for several years, and until we really got into it until utilities started bringing this solution on, it just wasn't cost effective for us. And so now we're able to come along with where they want to go and letting them see that the bells and whistles, I know features was the lowest thing that people had in the poll, but at the end of the day, some of those features are important, and your staff need to be able to see some of those features so that way they know that they're going to get what they want out of the system.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you. And we had our first question come in from Leanne earlier in our conversation. We have another question coming in from Aaron, and it looks like Aaron really wants to talk about phone dumps. And so Simon and Brian, I'll pose this question to you. Is data storage currently available via Avail, or is that when Polaris goes live? Aaron goes on to say that his agency is at just the beginning stages to use Avail for digital photos, but phone dump data is huge. So Simon, what are your thoughts? Is data storage currently available via Avail, or is that going to be when Polaris goes live?
So Polaris actually opens up the data aspect of it from different sources, and Aaron, he will be able to do phone dumps and other things into the system. It's designed to allow not only the storage, but the ease of transfer into Polaris as well. So there is a lot of interesting stuff coming up with Polaris that would allow people to take full advantage of not only storage, but some of the other services we provide.
Brian, picking up on Aaron's question, when you think about your time on the law enforcement side of things, how important is it to be able to dump all of that information from your phone where you've collected all of this data?
The ability to do it remotely saves an astronomical amount of time, right? Other than having to go out and canvass, having to go to somebody's house, have to collect their phone. It now means I no longer have to take someone's phone away from them. They can literally, through Polaris, I can send to their cell phone a third-party link for them to click with two-party identification. And they can simply then upload a video on their phone straight to my software, and I've never had to take possession of their phone. Very important. It provides one for security of the individual's property, and speed and access of me gathering information I need for my case.
Before we go to, yeah, go ahead.
So I think what Aaron's actually talking about is when we take a cell phone from a suspect or a victim and we ingest that and we pull an extraction of a cell phone, it may only be a 128 gigabyte cell phone. It's going to go up to potentially into the terabytes. And so, yeah, Simon hit it where he said it's going to be with Polaris, but to pull that data into this type of a solution, that's another area that's it's a game changer again, because we currently we use Drobos for our digital evidence management for cell phone stuff. We don't even put it onto a server because it's just too big. So once this really goes live, you're going to really be able to move a lot of different pieces that are really expensive for a police department to maintain into one solution.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you for the clarification and for the insight there. And Aaron, thank you for your question. Let's go to a question from Stephen. Stephen wants to know, does the software allow for an agency to prohibit sending information to another person or agency who then forwards it to another person or agency? Simon, I want to pose that question to you from a technology standpoint. So again, the question is, does the software allow for an agency to prohibit sending information to another person or another agency who then forwards it to another person or an agency? What's your thought on the capabilities there?
So there are two ways of sharing data within the system. One is you're creating an external link that will allow an external user, someone that's not on the system, to download the data. And once the data is downloaded, they could do whatever they want to do with it. But if you wanted to control access to the data, there is a way of sharing it with someone that has an account, so that you can actually define their role as view only. So they won't be able to share it, download it, or do anything with it, but review the data. And that would allow a person that needs to have access but not allowed to distribute the data easily access it, and at any given time that privilege could be revoked as well. And the system was designed from the ground up to address these types of issues.
Simon, thank you for that. And we have another question from one of our attendees. Brian wants to know, when can we expect Polaris to be available? Simon, any time frame or date on that for our attendees?
It's going to be middle of October in a couple of weeks. The exact date I think will be announced soon, but it will be generally available to everyone that wants to upgrade from Avail to Polaris. The beauty of it is you don't actually have to do anything. The data source is the same. You just log in into the new platform. We'll keep Avail available for a little bit until to allow people to migrate to Polaris, but we're confident the adoption will be faster because of all the features we've added to Polaris.
Got it. Thank you all for your questions. We want you to continue to keep those questions coming, so feel free to drop those questions into the chat, or if you have any comments for our panel of experts, please drop those in as well. I wanted to ask Simon and Brian, from your perspective of working with this technology, talking with law enforcement agencies about this technology, and then Lieutenant Peck, I'll ask you from the standpoint of, being on the law enforcement side, actually, implementing the technology. Let's talk about effectiveness. I imagine, Simon and Brian, when you're having conversations with law enforcement agencies, they want to know, how will I know that this is going to help me do the big thing that I'm trying to do? So how do you help people think through how they can measure effectiveness when they're implementing an effective DEMS? Simon, we'll start with you.
Right. So from the previous poll that was run, we saw that security is very important. No surprise there. The next item was one platform. So when you're selecting a digital evidence management system, you don't want to select 2, 3 of them where your data is scattered all over the place. So it's important to pick a digital evidence management system that is data source agnostic. And what I mean by that is it doesn't care whether it's a body camera, it's from one vendor, an in-car from another vendor, citizens data, fixed camera, phone dump, any type of digital evidence. The digital evidence management platform has to support all types of data. So that's truly the first thing that I would look at. The next thing is, if there is a way to directly bring data into the platform without having to copy it into thumb drives and things like that, that is also an important thing. And Brian mentioned a couple of the features that would be available in Polaris, where if someone had a video on their cell phone and you wanted to get it directly into a case, from within the case, you can actually send an invitation that would allow that person to upload a video that would be virus scanned and made available inside the case, and you get a notification saying so-and-so sent you the video you requested. So in terms of chain of custody, we can tell you where it came from and when it came from. All of that will be documented inside the case. So that's very important. Same goes with fixed cameras. We have a solution that will allow us to directly tap into fixed camera VMS systems so that we can pull data and create evidence out of it within this system. So that's absolutely important. The next thing is ease of data transfer. So as the lieutenant mentioned, phone dumps are very, very heavy. So you can't just use the browser to upload 200, 300 gig of data. So what we've done with Polaris, we've created a companion application that is designed to do transfers from a Windows operating system to the cloud without you having to know anything about transferring to the cloud securely. It's a very simple drag and drop application that will allow you to push as much data as you can, and you can actually do it where it's off-peak time when people are not using the system, so that your network is not utilized as much. That's when you want to push all this data. So that's part of the solution that we're providing. And I think people should be looking at these features when they're selecting a digital evidence management system. The other thing that is important is as data comes in, if it's not properly tagged, if it's not properly indexed, you can have petabytes of data in the digital evidence management system. You won't be able to find it. So you need to have a system that allows you to properly index and tag all data coming in so that you could do it by date, by location, by a number of factors. It makes it easy for you to find the data. The next and as we're talking about how difficult it is to push data up, if you have to download all the data to share it with someone else, then it kind of defeats the purpose, because that's going to create another congestion on your network. So it's important to have a digital evidence management system that allows sharing of data that's done in the cloud, meaning once the data is uploaded to the cloud, you don't have to pull it down ever again to share it with somebody else. That's an important one. The next and the last thing is, talks about, people who are talking about collaboration. Well, collaboration happens when you have a platform that's extensible, that can connect to a bunch of other existing platforms and then automate the workflow of pulling in as much data. It could be from CAD, RMS, 911, audio calls. You want a system that will allow you to pull as much data into a single repository, single case, that you can share with a single click to a prosecutor or a defense attorney.
Simon, thank you for all of that. Lieutenant Peck, one of the things that I heard Brian say earlier is, this is all designed to try to make your job, the folks who are working in law enforcement agencies, make your job easier. Simon just talked a lot about, effectiveness. From your standpoint, how are you measuring? When you think of the things that Simon ran through, does that coincide with how you and your department are measuring effectiveness for the system?
Absolutely. So we are actually really excited about the drag and drop capability that Simon talked about, because like I mentioned, we're building a real-time crime center, and we're wanting to be able to pull from one system and actually potentially even to be able to tie into the VMS is even better. But as we're putting officers out on the street, we've got cameras at our intersections. We have a crash come in, and an officer's got a question of whether who's telling me the truth. Being able to get that video to them real time. So those things that's real life. That's stuff that is happening. We're going to be able to do because of a system like this to get information into the hands. And Brian talked about the ease, right? So you've got, in law enforcement, you've got a range of technologically savvy people. You've got those who can move around in a computer pretty well, but then you've got those that they still would rather the stone and chisel. So you've got to be able to work within those parameters. And one of the things that we've liked about Utility's solution with the CAD integration and all of those things is it makes it easy for the officer that they go out, their CAD call is tied to their body camera, then the video is tagged. They can go back and confirm whether the tagging, the auto tagging was correct, and all of that. So all of that's in there, but it's easy. And even my old timers that have been around for a while, they appreciate it. They don't have to unplug their camera when they come back to the station. It all takes place at the car, and it offloads from the car. For the body camera side, that's great. But then when we start bringing in all those other pieces, they don't have to go anywhere else either. So it just becomes one solution.
Lieutenant Peck, thank you for that. Simon, Brian, Lieutenant Peck, we've got a number of questions that have come in from our attendees, which is great. So with about 11 minutes left in our time, we're going to make sure that we can try to dive through all of these questions here. One question came from John. John wants to know, can you provide more information on categorization of BWC footage through linkage to CAD? Is there a process to verify, audit, edit this to assure that tagging comports with video retention times for different events? And just as a point of clarification, by event, John is talking about routine traffic stops versus incidents that involve use of force. Lieutenant Peck, I want to get your thoughts on that first.
So, and I'm going to assume that Polaris is going to have the similar structure like what we already have in Avail, where I, as an administrator, I say this classification means this longer retention. So if somebody classifies it with use of force, as an agency, I get to say this is how long that retention period is. And so I'm gonna, because I haven't gotten to touch that piece of Polaris, I'll probably let Brian and Simon talk about that. But that's always the nice piece on our side is we here a couple years ago had to change some retention periods, and it was all at our level. We get to make that determination.
Brian, anything that you can add to that, or Simon?
Yeah, from reading John's question, I'm taking categorization, meaning through a CAD that would classify what run type you've gotten that's connected to that body-worn video. And we all know that a dispatch run of an armed robbery, when a cop gets there, can turn into a strong arm robbery, and you have to reset the type of that original CAD run. So if your video has been tagged as an armed robbery, at the end of the day, it's just a strong arm robbery. The officer can pull out their body camera, pull the video up right straight from their body camera and reclassify it right there. Or they can get into Polaris and they can reclassify it right there. One of the great things of our system too is through our widget catalog on your desktop, a supervisor, a sergeant, your shift lieutenant can monitor the classification types and types of runs on their patrol officers. And if a run hasn't been classified, they can see immediately that Officer Smith has 15 unclassified runs that they need to get classified. So supervisor can one, ensure accountability on run type classification, but they can also go under people's runs and make sure classifications are correct. And then our system is policy based. So as an agency, you decide, like Lieutenant Peck said, as an agency, you decide under what particular classification, how long you hold that video for. You know, what's your state law, what's your local ordinances, what's your department policy for classification retention times. Now, a great thing with unlimited cloud storage like we have through body-worn camera video, better safe than sorry, hold that video a little longer than you think you might need it. We're not going to nickel dime you, and it's not going to cost you more money at the end of the day. So be safe rather than sorry, because you never know when a complaint might come in or a case might get refiled or something comes down the road when you wish you still had that video.
Brian, thank you. Simon, I want to pose the next question to you. This comes from Mark, and we've got a number of questions here, so we're going to try to go rapid fire and get through all of these. But Simon, Mark wants to know, does the system convert the third-party video, DVR, NVR video, into usable formats when it gets ingested?
The simple answer is yes. Unless the codec is proprietary, all media is converted during the ingestion process, so that it's browser friendly and it could be played on mobile devices, tablets, laptops. The goal is to make everything accessible to the end user without the end user having to know how to do all these techy things. And the other thing is, as we're converting incoming data, we actually keep the original, so that if you're required to provide the original data or file, you have access to that as well.
Simon, thank you. Another question is coming from Jason. He wants to know, is the metadata uploaded from other video sources usable or accessible? Simon, Brian, what are your thoughts there?
It all depends on the data source. There are certain media that encode additional information into the actual file that we can extract. And there are certain vendors that actually provide a companion file that includes metadata. Our goal is to integrate as much as possible. We're working with different video product sources to kind of bring in as much information into the view as we can. Of course, if it is coming from our product, it's a lot easier because we have an integrated platform with our in-car system and body camera. But we're trying to bring in as much information as available with either encoded metadata within the media file or additional companion files.
Simon, thank you. I think we've got about 3 questions left. One is from Shelley. She wants to know, will the switch to Polaris affect ultimate witness? So Simon, Brian, any thoughts on whether or not the switch to Polaris will affect ultimate witness?
The short answer is no.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. We've got another question from Mike. Mike wants to know, what is the pricing structure model going to look like? Will it be based on the amount of storage used or something like a per user or per case type of structure? Any insight, Simon or Brian, that you can give on pricing from Mike's question?
I think we may have to contact Mike and give him information, but there will be, of course, a cost to the additional storage because we're going to have to pay for that as well. But I think the details would be made available if we can have Mike's contact info. Definitely, someone from our group, sales group or marketing or product group, can reach out to him.
All right, sounds good. We've got another question here from Bill. Bill wants to know, what about redaction capabilities via reports and car BWC footage? Any thoughts there?
So Polaris has a video publishing, media publishing engine called Publisher that allows you to actually find faces in a video and give you an array of faces to pick from so that you can decide who you want to redact and who you want to leave clear. It allows you to find other objects. We're actually working on more AI models that will allow us to find more things within videos and audio. It allows you to mute, alter audio so that you can actually disguise the voice and still have the information available. It allows you to add a title screen. You can add your own logo. All of these is available within Polaris, but exciting thing is we're going to also allow you to do if you're using Polaris as your digital evidence management system, you'll be able to also redact videos from CCTV and other sources as well.
We have two more questions before we wrap things up and pass it back to John to close us out. Bill wants to know, do you have watermark or other means of proving car BWC has not been altered?
So we have actually a very advanced way of tagging not just the entire video, but chunks of the video that's being recorded by our system. And within Avail or Polaris, there is a verification button that allows you to validate that the data that you're looking at is exactly as it was recorded by the device.
Simon, thank you. And our final question from our attendees comes from Katie Ann. Katie Ann wants to know, if the codec is proprietary and the player is downloaded, is it correct that all files should be stored?
That's a very good question. If the codec is proprietary and the player is available, a user can upload the player and the media to Polaris and download it to view it on, I'm assuming it's going to be a Windows application to a Windows laptop. So it still could be used as a repository and a way of sharing the video with the player, but it won't be able to be viewed within a browser, but you still can download it and play it.
All right, Simon, thank you for that answer. And thank you to all of our attendees for the great questions and comments. It's really helped us to have a great conversation here. Want to say a big thank you to Simon, to Lieutenant Peck, to Brian for all of the insight, learnings, and lessons that you shared with our attendees. And thank you for attending today's webinar. Now, if you have a follow-up question based on what we've talked about that you would like answered, please email us at info@utility.com. That's info@utility.com, and we'll respond to you that way. Again, a big thank you to each of our panelists for participating today. The information you've shared is a real invaluable resource for all of our attendees of our webinar today. We're going to share a recap of the video of this conversation, and we welcome your feedback in the survey. So on behalf of the entire team at Utility, thank you for making the time to join us. We hope you stay well. We hope to see you at our next webinar. So John, we'll pass it back off to you for any closing words.
Thanks, Charles. And I'd also like to echo Charles's thanks to our presenters, Simon, Brian, and Lieutenant Peck. Thank you for your expertise and sharing that with our FBI NA members and their staffs. I'd like to also thank all the attendees today for taking the time. We're all busy and we appreciate you taking this hour or so out of your day to join us today. And just one final thought, today's webinar will also be archived on the FBI National Academy Associates website at www.fbina.org. So again, thanks for your participation. This ends our presentation. Please stay safe and stay well.